Monday morning, I walked into the executive conference room expecting to run a system audit, not to get blindsided by a public execution. The new CEO, Philip Crane, was already standing at the head of the table, suit crisp, smirk ready. I barely had time to pull out my laptop before he said, "Before we begin, Matthew Hole, you're no longer with Carrion as of this moment." Silence. 12 people in that room, not one of them moved. I looked around. There was Robin, sitting 2 seats down, stiff in a navy blazer, the one I bought her when she got promoted. She didn't blink, didn't say a word. I said, "Excuse me?" Philip didn't flinch. "We appreciate your contributions, but it's time for new leadership in infrastructure." The way he said it, like I was a broken plug-in, not the guy who built the entire digital backbone of this company from the ground up. I looked down at the conference table. My badge was still clipped to my belt. I unhooked it, flipped it once between my fingers, and dropped it on the polished wood. It clattered, louder than it should have. Still, nobody spoke. Robin kept her eyes locked on the wall like she didn't even know me. I said one word, "Understood." Then I turned and walked out. Calm, no yelling, no begging. But my hands were shaking by the time the elevator doors closed. Quick note, before we go further, share which city or country you're watching from. Now, here's the part no one in that room knew. Not Philip, not Robin, not any of those fresh out of consulting face idiots. I had seen this coming 6 months ago. The company was shifting. My role had been quietly chipped away. Meetings without me. Decisions I only heard about later. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. Sentinel was already alive. A self-protecting fallback system I coded under my own clearance. Quiet, isolated, but fully wired into the Carrion infrastructure. If I was ever locked out, Sentinel would know. And it would act. They thought they were getting rid of dead weight, but I didn't just build the system. I was the system. As the elevator dropped floor by floor, I felt my pulse finally start to settle. My phone buzzed with Slack notifications. All cut off now. I deleted the app mid-descent. By the time I hit the lobby, Sentinel's countdown had already begun. I stepped out into the street, took one deep breath, and walked east. Into the city I helped automate, while they sat upstairs playing CEO. 2 days later, I was back. Not with a badge, with a contractor temp tag that said visitor in red block letters. They couldn't cut me out completely. No one else knew the infrastructure well enough to keep things running during transition. They called it consulting support during transition. What it really was? A strategic humiliation. Philip's new team floated around like a fashion ad. High tops, vests, energy drinks lined up like trophies. Not one of them looked older than 28. None of them had ever debugged code at 2 in the morning, while a client screamed over lost data. Robin didn't even glance at me. She passed me once in the hallway, talking loud to Trey about streamlining back-end redundancies. A phrase I drilled into her back in her second year when she barely knew how a switch stack worked. Now she was walking like she owned the place. Chin up, voice polished, acting like I was just some outsider helping with legacy cleanup. She'd picked up more over the years, sure, but mostly she knew just enough to sound fluent, not enough to build. Trey, their new golden boy, kept bouncing between desks like a caffeinated squirrel. I caught him scrolling through one of my sandbox directories, lips tight, eyes narrowed like he was solving a damn mystery. He clicked into a folder labeled /dev_archive_loop, a decoy I left for situations just like this. 2 seconds later, I heard him mumble, "Dead space, cleaning this out." I didn't move, didn't blink. He hit delete. Sentinel woke up. Auto-preservation kicked in, redirected every trace of real infrastructure to a hidden subnet, mirrored all functions, rewrote breadcrumbs in real time, exactly as I'd programmed it to do, without me lifting a finger. To Trey, it looked like the folder vanished, nothing happened, and the system just shrugged. He grinned like he'd done something heroic. "We don't need this stuff," he said, tossing a look toward Robin. She nodded without even asking what he'd deleted. They thought they were scrubbing me out. All they did was reinforce the locks. I didn't speak. I let them think they were winning. Later that afternoon, I walked past a team huddle. Robin was leading it, gesturing at a touchscreen like she was running NASA. And that's why real-time redundancy has to be abstracted from direct query access. Think of it like a shadow pool for back-end orchestration. I stopped walking. That was my line, my exact metaphor. I'd drawn it on a whiteboard in 2019 with a Sharpie and a hangover. She hadn't even understood it back then. Now she was tossing it around like it was common sense. Trey nodded, impressed. That's smart. We should turn that into a microservice. I laughed under my breath, loud enough for one of them to hear, not loud enough to call attention. Nobody turned around, fine. I kept walking. Back in the server room, I pulled up Sentinel's quiet logs on my personal laptop, which, by the way, I never connected to their network. That's day one operational security. Everything I needed came in through back channels I built myself. Sentinel showed full health, status, active, masked, responsive, no errors. They thought I was some disposable legacy engineer. What they didn't realize was I was the legacy, not just the past, but the core they still depended on. They fired a man, sure, but they never removed the code. Now I was invisible, embedded, watching. They broke the structure, but the framework was still mine. They painted over it with buzzwords and dashboards, but the bones hadn't changed. I made sure of that. By 5, most of the kids had cleared out. Philip had disappeared behind a tinted glass wall like a villain in a B-grade startup documentary. Robin passed me once more on her way to the elevator. She didn't say a word, but her eyes flicked toward my folding table. And for a half second, just half, her jaw tensed. She knew, not everything, but something, and that was enough to keep her guessing. I packed up, closed the laptop, and walked out. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody even looked. Perfect. The next morning, I walked into the main auditorium like I had every right to be there, because technically I did. Nobody had invited me to demo day, but nobody had the balls to say I couldn't come either. Rows of folding chairs, projector humming, stale coffee in paper cups. Half the company was packed into the room. The other half was watching on Slack Live. I slipped into a chair near the back wall, next to a potted plant and a flickering light panel. Trey took the mic first, bouncing on his toes like he was about to pitch to Shark Tank. We're excited to present the full redesign of Carrion's back-end operations suite, he said, eyes locked on the audience like a golden retriever waiting for praise. This is a clean break from legacy systems. I leaned back and folded my arms. The screen behind him lit up. Big, shiny dashboards, new fonts, dark mode toggles, fresh UI wrappers. Underneath it, Sentinel. He was showing off a new coat of paint on my engine, and he didn't even know. Everything's leaner, Trey went on. We dropped deadweight code, cut latency, improved routing with clean pipelining. He gestured toward a slide labeled Parallel Dynamic Forklift Routing. I blinked. Forklift? He meant forking. Jesus. I raised my hand. Not high, just enough to signal. He saw it, hesitated, then nodded slightly. I stood and kept it simple. Sorry, just want to clarify. Did you mean dynamic forking? Forklift routing isn't a real thing. Trey froze. You could actually see his smile flicker. Then Robin stepped in. She stood and said loud and clear, "Let's give the floor to the current team." Like that, the tone wasn't sharp. It was worse, polite, cold, final. Half the room shifted in their seats. Nobody said anything. Not even the devs I'd trained. Not even Carl from sysadmin, who I once bailed out during a 3-day outage he caused. I nodded once, sat down for 5 seconds. Then I stood back up, grabbed my bag, and walked out. Dignity intact, but gutted. I didn't slam the door, didn't throw a scene. I just left. What I didn't know was that someone, one of the interns sitting stage right, had been filming the demo for internal socials. Phone propped on the edge of their laptop. The whole thing, Trey's forklift nonsense, my correction, Robin's shutdown, the silence, and me walking out. That video started quiet, passed around on Slack in a private group called #Oops. Then a copy landed in Culture Chat, and then another in #Leadership Leaks. I didn't even know that one existed. By the end of the day, it had a dozen comments and 24 re-uploads. No tags, no likes, just quiet views. I sat in the break room around 4:30, alone, drinking burnt coffee from a plastic mug when I saw Trey walk by the glass wall. He didn't look so chipper anymore. Phone in hand, face pale. He knew. I opened Sentinel's portal and checked the event triggers. The system had flagged the demo as a significant exposure, not for code, for behavior. The AI didn't just track infrastructure, it tracked patterns, power dynamics, tone. Robin had crossed the line, publicly, and Carrion had just documented it for me. Not that I needed the proof. I'd felt the knife the second she opened her mouth. But now it was recorded, and passed around, and embedded. That night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop open and a blank resignation email typed out. Subject, final notice, body, 2 sentences, cold, clean. I hovered over the send button for a long time. My finger actually touched the trackpad, but something in my gut pulled back. Not fear, not pride, just instinct. Instead, I opened Sentinel. No dashboards, no pretty UI, just raw logs, lines of black and white code flicking by like heartbeat monitor blips. And right there, buried in a timestamp from exactly 1 hour ago, an unauthorized root restructure attempt. My stomach dropped. I slowed the log, isolated the hash, and pulled the credentials manually. It wasn't Trey. It was Robin. She wasn't just snooping. She was trying to reassign root-level permissions, a move that could lock me out permanently and rewrite Sentinel's internal architecture. That wasn't cleanup. That was erasure. I stared at the screen, my fingers clenched, my jaw locked. 3 years ago, she almost cost Carrion a multi-million-dollar client because she uploaded the wrong sandbox config to a live environment. Exposed the client's financials for 17 minutes before Sentinel caught it and reversed the pull. Legal never found out. Because I took the blame, I saved her career. And now she was digging into the foundation I built, trying to scrape my name off the stone. I didn't message her, didn't send a warning. Instead, I toggled Sentinel into watch mode. No alarms, no counter-strikes, just eyes. From now on, every unauthorized action she made would be mirrored, time-stamped, and backed up to a private cloud node she didn't even know existed. If she so much as touched the wrong directory again, Sentinel would see it. And I'd see her. She wanted to rewrite the map, fine, but she forgot one thing. I didn't just write the map, I built the terrain. 5 minutes later, I got a Slack ping from Carl in sysadmin. Hey, you still have access to the redundancy schema from 2021? I didn't reply. Robin was already trying to fill the gaps. I leaned back, stared at the city outside my window. The traffic lights blurred in the glass. My phone buzzed once. A new Slack channel invite. Infra-Restack Task Force. Cute. They were moving fast now, desperate to make it look like they'd always been in control. But Sentinel wasn't a program you could scrap and rebuild. It wasn't a package. It was an organism, grown, shaped, and layered over years of late nights, crashes, recoveries, patches no one else even remembered writing. It knew what belonged and who didn't. She thought she was cleaning house, but all she was doing was leaving fingerprints. I closed the laptop, stood up, and poured myself a drink. Let them keep trying. They thought they were inside my system, but now I was inside theirs. The next morning, HR sent the final offboarding email. No call, no explanation, just a PDF and a badge collection notice. Please return by 2 p.m. to collect your personal items. I didn't reply. I just showed up. Security buzzed me in like I was a delivery driver. No one greeted me in the lobby, no handshake, no thanks, no eye contact. I took the elevator up to the 5th floor, the floor I helped wire, secure, and optimize. Every screen I passed was glowing with dashboards I wrote. Every hallway buzzed with signals I'd routed. And still, not one person looked at me. At my old desk, a cardboard box sat waiting, taped shut, labeled HOL. I sat on the edge of the chair, not my chair anymore, and peeled it open. Old notepads, a flash drive, a few cables. Then something I didn't expect, a blue folder, worn edges. Inside, 8 pages, double-sided, printed and marked in my handwriting. Sentinel version 1.0. Systems architecture and integrity safeguards signed by me. Dated 2016, not a copy, the original. Idiots. They packed their own time bomb into the goodbye box. I smiled, tucked the folder under my arm, walked out without saying a word. That night, in my apartment, I placed the blueprint next to my keyboard like a talisman. I opened Sentinel's control console and typed a single command. Init dot freeze layered slow equals true. And just like that, Phase 2 began. It wasn't a crash, it wasn't a wipeout, it was suffocation. By morning, Jira ticket routing slowed to a crawl. Email metadata misaligned. Outbound messages got stripped of attachments mid-send. Nobody noticed at first. They blamed the network. By noon, the dashboard's tray showed off at demo day started timing out. API calls failed silently. Auto backups didn't trigger. Cron jobs skipped. Nobody could trace it because Sentinel didn't break things. It gently removed them, slowly, quietly. By 3, I got a text from a friend still in support. Everything's screwed. They're losing their minds. I walked over to my kitchen, poured coffee, and let the logs roll. At Carrion, tension was climbing. Robin ran 3 diagnostics. Nothing flagged. She reset her permissions twice. Didn't help. Trey tried rolling back the last container deployment. Bricked it even worse. Blamed Git. Blamed Jenkins. Blamed a shadow ban on their AWS pipeline. Wrong on all counts. They were standing on a foundation they didn't understand. And that foundation was shifting, one line at a time. They still thought I was gone, but Sentinel was alive, and it wasn't lashing out, it was obeying. For years I'd warned them. Keep the architecture clean, preserve the chain of control. They ignored it. They tried to swap out the brain without understanding the nervous system. Now they were watching dashboards freeze mid-load, status bars lock at 99%. Internal tools misfire like old engines choking on bad fuel. Slack threads filled with question marks and frustration. No email since 10/11? Anyone else missing half their dashboards? Why did prod sync to March data? No answers, just static. I sipped my coffee and opened the next phase's monitor. No need to escalate, not yet. This wasn't a flood. It was a slow leak, and the floor was getting wet. By midweek, Sentinel had buried Carrion in confusion. It wasn't loud, just everywhere. And then, like clockwork, some junior tech went poking where he shouldn't. His name was Felix, fresh out of college. Still had his school email and his GitHub bio. He was part of a new internal task force Robin had spun up, something about legacy neutralization. They were scraping old threads, running forensic keyword scans, trying to reverse engineer what was happening. Felix found a relay from 2017 buried in a staging server nobody touched anymore. The timestamp alone should have tipped him off. But he clicked anyway. The thread connected to a background job labeled /sent_core, one of Sentinel's oldest hidden aliases. From there, he tried to trace origin permissions. That's when he tripped the credential log. MHOL, that's all it said. 2 characters, period, surname. But it was enough. Robin was on it within 10 minutes. I watched her permissions spike. She ran a trace on Felix's activity, checked the relay thread, and cross-referenced the credential tag against archived root access logs. She knew that name. I could feel it through the screen. The moment she saw it, her access froze, then flared again. She tried twice to override Sentinel's redacted registry. Both failed. She switched terminals. Failed again. I didn't have to guess what was happening in that office. I could see it. Felix's session log went red. Sentinel responded exactly as it was built to. Scrubbed the path, collapsed the relay connection, deleted the cached log, not just from the system, but from the forensic tools themselves. To Felix, it looked like a broken link. To Robin, it looked like a ghost. She pinged Philip. His credentials came online 5 minutes later. No command attempts, just read-only browsing. He was nervous, didn't want to touch anything himself. That's when I knew they were scared. Not frustrated, not annoyed, scared. Because this wasn't just friction anymore. It was presence, something they couldn't explain, something tied to a name they thought they'd erased. I didn't move. I didn't type a single command. Sentinel handled it all, exactly as I trained it to. Logs rotated, false footprints scattered. Core protocols masked under newer, fake services Robin herself had approved. And deep underneath it all, buried inside Sentinel's skeleton key, the original blueprint Robin once helped file, sat one immutable truth. I was still here, and now they knew. Later that night, I watched Robin rerun her own credentials against inactive shell scripts she'd archived herself years ago. Scripts I'd written, ones she never fully understood. She was hunting. Just 3 letters and a half-deleted log entry. But it was enough to break her script. By Thursday morning, I saw the change in the logs. Different syntax, new IP range, external. Philip had brought in outside help. Smart move, too late. The firm was called Core Vista. Expensive, high reputation, all NDA'd up. The guy leading the charge was Jared Maddox, senior security analyst, known for finding backdoors no one else could see. I watched him sniff through the system from a staging node in Virginia. He didn't waste time. No probing, no polite scans. He dove straight into brute force dictionary attempts on Sentinel's obfuscated ports. He wasn't guessing. He was looking for something. Someone had told him where to aim. For 10 hours, he built a script, custom logic, rotating tokens, used a multi-threaded recursive crawl through protocol layers we hadn't used in years. And then he got close. Too close. One attempt bypassed the tertiary gate Sentinel used to confuse foreign agents. That gate wasn't supposed to be reachable unless you already knew the path. Which meant Jared wasn't just good. He was informed, probably by Robin. I let the script run, watched it twist through compressed files, legacy configs, even old Docker containers I'd buried under fake project names. He pinged one thread called /JaneDraft/internal, thinking it was junk. Instead, it hit the tripwire. Sentinel didn't hesitate. Jared Maddox's credentials were erased in under 1 second. Not revoked, not flagged, deleted. Wiped clean from all carrion systems. His ID no longer existed. Every token, every SSH key, every VPN auth, gone. Then Sentinel blacklisted his IP and all derivative proxies system-wide. He vanished. At Carrion, that was the moment everything cracked. Slack channels flooded with alerts. DevOps lost access to 3 environments. The QA team couldn't deploy code. Jenkins rejected their build certificates. Trey tried rerouting dashboard traffic to a recovery stack, but the load balancer rejected the certificate chain. He kept refreshing, panicking, screaming at the screen like it owed him something. And Robin? She froze. I saw her open 4 terminals, one after the other. Typed in admin overrides. None worked. She reset her password. Didn't matter. Sentinel let her in, but only to watch read-only mode. I'd programmed it to be kind that way. Philip tried calling a company-wide emergency sync, but the video platform glitched out midstream. Half the department never got the invite. HR couldn't email the call notes. Server delay. The board started asking questions. Why are systems down? Where are the backups? Philip scrambled, started tossing out acronyms. Transient delay. Vendor-side congestion. Redundant load. Hit saturation. None of it meant anything. He lost them right there. When you can't explain your own fire, the people above you start looking for the guy who smelled smoke first. And I'd been gone for weeks. Robin didn't say a word on the call. Not one. Just stared at her screen like it might apologize if she waited long enough. I sat at home, lights off, watching it unfold on 3 monitors. No popcorn, no music, just silence. And Sentinel humming through the logs like a heartbeat. This wasn't some Hollywood system takedown. There were no explosions, just friction becoming drag, drag becoming collapse. They'd built their control on top of something they never understood. Now the scaffolding was gone, and the structure was folding in slow motion. I didn't interfere. I didn't escalate. Sentinel was never designed to destroy. It was designed to remind. You don't fire the architect and keep living in the house without eventually hearing the walls groan. Friday morning, just before 9, I got the email. No subject line. Just a scanned PDF from legal@carrionhq.com with the file name noticeofinquiry.pdf. I opened it. 3 pages of corporate nothing speak. Vague, cautious, and fake polite. They never said my name, not once. Just a former contractor who may have introduced irregularities into the operational environment. They were accusing me of sabotage. I sat there reading the last paragraph, that smug little line about reserving all rights and remedies, and felt the burn crawl up my spine. They wanted me scared, wanted me on edge, unsure, second-guessing everything. But then I looked at my desk and saw the folder, blue cover, worn edges, the one they had accidentally packed in my exit box, the one I'd nearly forgotten for 3 years. I opened it slowly. Inside, the original Sentinel blueprint signed in pen. My name, my handwriting, dated 2016. Below that, server logs from the first sandbox environment. Printed email threads with time-stamped approvals. Invoices for private hosting billed to my name, paid through my personal LLC. And best of all, the unsigned licensing agreement. Carrion had never executed it. They ran Sentinel on a verbal green light and crossed their fingers that I'd never call them on it. I'd built the whole thing under independent contract status. I owned the IP legally, fully. So I picked up the phone and called Marcia, my lawyer since the beginning. She picked up on the second ring. "Morning, Matt. You sound like someone just handed you money. I need you to look at something," I said. "It's carrion. Send it over." 5 minutes later, she called me back laughing. "I was worried for a second," she said. "But they're cooked. Serious? Dead serious. This isn't just weak, it's reckless. They're accusing you of attacking a system they don't even own. You have the design, the records, the deployment path, the lack of license. That's fatal. What do we send back?" "Just 1 page," she said. "Let it sting." We picked the original Sentinel architecture document. Page 1. The one with my signature and the line, "Ownership remains the property of the creator unless explicitly transferred in writing." There was no transfer. I scanned it clean, no commentary, no cover letter, just the facts. Marcia hit send from her end, direct to Carrion's legal inbox. Then we waited. 10 hours. Nothing. No reply. No follow-up. No out-of-office response. Just silence. The kind that lands like a punch, because they knew. They took their shot, hoping I'd flinch, hoping I'd panic and offer up something they could use. Instead, I handed them their own oversight, gift wrapped in their own packing tape. I didn't hear from Philip, didn't hear from Robin, didn't need to. Sentinel flagged 0 activity from their legal team after the response hit. They didn't escalate. They folded. All that power, all that structure, and it crumbled because they never read the fine print. They thought they'd buried me, but they'd buried the wrong guy. That Friday, Carrion held an emergency investor meeting behind closed doors. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. Sentinel's shadow relay fed me the live audio through a dummy webhook Robin approved months ago. It streamed straight to my headphones while I sat on my balcony with a coffee and an old-school legal pad. Philip opened strong, or at least tried to. "I want to reassure everyone that what we're dealing with is the result of legacy flaws. Years of bloated code and untracked systems inherited from a previous architecture. It's not sabotage, it's just outdated tech." He kept his voice smooth, like this was a routine bug cleanup, like the system hadn't been rotting under his leadership. I recognized the tone. It was the same one you use when the babysitter burns down the kitchen and blames the toaster. Across the room, someone shifted. That's when Elliot Crane, the main investor, one of the original partners, cleared his throat. "Legacy flaws, huh?" he said. "Interesting choice of words." Philip paused. "Yes, well, the infrastructure..." Elliot cut him off, calm, cold, dead on. "Let me tell you all a quick story," he said. You could hear chairs creak. Someone stopped typing. "About 3 years ago, I had lunch with a contractor who was consulting for us. Just the 2 of us, steak and martinis. We were talking shop, just ideas. This guy starts scribbling on the back of a cocktail napkin, drawing out this crazy modular framework, self-healing logic loops, hybrid logic trees. I told him it sounded over-engineered. A pause. Then he smiled and said, "Maybe. But when it breaks, it'll fix itself before anyone even knows it happened." I exhaled slow. He went on. "I kept that napkin. Not sure why. Maybe instinct. But I've got it in my desk drawer, still signed in blue ink. M. Hole. You could hear a pin drop. Then he said it. "I'm beginning to wonder if it ever was yours, Philip." Silence. No one breathed, no one dared. Savannah, the new VP of operations, froze. You could almost hear her brain stalling out mid-process. Philip tried to speak. "Well, the architecture was collaboratively managed." Elliot raised a hand. "Don't." Philip stopped. Just like that, the script broke. The one they'd rehearsed for the past 2 months. The gaslight-heavy narrative that I was a ghost in the machine, a legacy bug, a problem they were fixing. That napkin cracked the whole illusion, because it didn't matter what dashboards looked like, or how many consultants they hired, or how many legal threats they sent. Someone in power, someone they needed, just said my name, not as a liability, as the creator. The call ended 10 minutes later. Tight, awkward, no resolution. Philip never recovered his footing. Robin didn't say a word the entire time. And Savannah? She left the call 2 minutes early. I closed my laptop and sat in silence for a second, watching a bird land on the ledge across from me. The machine was still running, but the engine room had been exposed. 2 days later, I got an email from an address I hadn't seen in years. Subject: "Let's build." It was from Aaron Lynn, co-founder of a quiet little startup I'd advised back when it was 3 guys in a rented garage. Now they had Series B funding and a problem no one could solve. Their architecture was bloated, disconnected, fragile. The message was short: no titles, no games. "We want you to build its brain." That was it. I replied 2 words. "I'm in." No NDAS, no fancy pitch deck. Just a Google Meet the next morning and a repo already prepped. By the end of the week, I was rebuilding Sentinel from scratch. We called it Sentinel-1 this time. Not buried, not hidden, not patched onto a broken skeleton. This was clean, fast, unapologetic. Designed from the first line to scale without compromise. I didn't talk about Carrion, didn't need to, but I saw the headlines. Their stock took a 12-point dip after the Friday meeting, then 16 more by Tuesday. Clients started pulling accounts. Quiet exits, no press releases, just gaps in revenue reports. Philip vanished from LinkedIn. His Carrion bio scrubbed, no press statement. No farewell post. Robin didn't disappear, but she might as well have. She was moved out of infrastructure and tucked into a side project labeled Strategic Special Ops. That's what companies call it when they don't have the nerve to fire you outright. I didn't gloat. I didn't send messages. I just kept building. One morning, I got to the new office early. Roof access was open. I brought my coffee up, let the air hit my face, and looked out over the city. And there it was, Carrion's building, still shiny, still tall, still trying to act like nothing ever cracked. But I knew better. They'd stood on code they never understood, weaponized a system they never earned, and when it collapsed beneath them, they scrambled to rewrite history. You can fire a man. You can replace his name in the org chart. You can even lie about who wrote the backbone of your empire, but you can't delete the one who built your spine and walked away with the key.